This is the first live-action X-Men movie. Or, well, kind of. This is the pilot episode for a TV show called Generation X. Airing as a TV movie on Fox in 1996, it followed a set of teen mutants attending Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. And like a mutant child born to narrow-minded parents, Generation X was cast aside by both Disney and Marvel. But it kind of deserved the treatment it received thanks to a severe misunderstanding of its source material.
So what's your thing?
I don't know what it's called, but, fireworks shoot out of my fingers.
Created by Scott Lobdell and Chris Bacalo, Generation X was based on a series of comics by the same name and began its run in 1994. The series was a teen-focused X-Men spinoff that tried to bank off the popularity of Sienkiewicz and Claremont's New Mutants. Though the comics were well-liked and featured the now fan-favorite character Jubilee, the team just couldn't reach the same creative heights and the series eventually crumbled. But that didn't stop the Fox network from making a bet on Generation X, a $4 million bet, if the alleged budget is to be believed.
I can't help being creative any more than you can help being a greedy capitalist.
Airing in a primetime slot on February 20th, the pilot had the backing of both Avi Arad and Stan Lee as executive producers. Fox was hoping that this live-action version of a familiar property would bring in the general, older audience that the animated X-Men series didn't. Despite both the writer Eric Blakeney and director Jack Scholder insisting they were interested in the source material, Generation X feels more like a spoof than a spin-off. Scholder even admitted in an interview with Sci-Fi that he had never encountered the comics before being brought onto the project, and it shows. From the total lack of team dynamics to the casting of white actress Heather McComb to play Chinese-American Jubilee, Generation X is nothing short of an unmitigated disaster.
I'm a bad girl, and I've got some nasty mutant tricks, so just back off.
Still, it's not all bad. The chunky tech, Virtua Fighter 2 arcade cabinet, lava lamps, and garish lighting make it obvious when the pilot was made. It's a mid-90s time capsule in the most charming sense. It also features a brand new villain that wasn't part of the comics, Dr. Russell Tresh. Formerly a scientist who performed illegal experiments on mutants, Tresh specializes in the matters of subconscious mind, which is why he finds himself working for an advertising company. Played by Matt Frewer doing a bad Jim Carrey impression, Tresh's cartoonish speech patterns and manic energy are one of the few enjoyable things about Generation X.
I'm feeling seriously omnipotent!
Bouncing between intense adult subjects and kiddie humor, the pilot struggles to find a distinct personality. Several awkward scenes and raunchy jokes made it through to the final cut, including 2 F-bombs courtesy of Jubilee.
Are you nuts? I cosmically my pants.
This bizarre mix leaves things feeling incongruous and uncomfortable in the worst way, and that follows through to the actual plot. Essentially, Tresh is looking to harvest a mutant brain to create a mind control device, and our ragtag group of rowdy teens and inexperienced teachers has to stop him. We meander through some scenes while rushing through others with no discernible goal in mind. Worst of all, we get very little in the way of team bonding, which should be a crime when adapting anything X-Men related. Our group of teens splits up every chance they get. There's a focus on romantic entanglements and individual friendships over their group dynamics. But even the characters and relationships they choose to dwell on feel underdeveloped.
It's amazing to me how much more power a moment of stupidity has over years of good work.
It doesn't help that 2 of the characters from the comics were replaced by shallow copies due to budgetary constraints. Husk, whose mutant ability allowed her to shed her skin and reveal a stronger surface underneath, was replaced by Buff, played by Suzanne Davis. She's exceptionally strong. She's also the only character who has any angst surrounding her powers, and it comes out in the form of ill-defined body image issues. Chamber, who harbored a massive psionic energy flare in his chest, was replaced by Refrax, a knockoff Cyclops played by Randall Slavin. Even the mutants who made it on screen suffered at the hands of the pilot's incompetence. In the comics, the laid-back Mondo was of Samoan descent and could not only absorb the hardness of material, but take on its physical properties. In the pilot, he was played by Bumper Robinson, who they turned into a jockish stereotype.
You're still big. And you're huge. Boom, ping, bing!
The character who suffers the most is Finola Hughes, Emma Frost. Despite her history as a series villain, Emma now serves as headmistress of Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. Alongside her, as co-headmaster, is Jeremy Ratchford's Banshee. TV fans were likely confused about how the Wicked White Queen came to such a position of power at the X-Mansion, especially considering the last time she showed up on screen was during the Dark Phoenix arc of the X-Men animated series in 1994. Comic fans, on the other hand, were at an advantage. Leading up to Generation X, the comics flesh out Emma's fluctuating role in the X-Men. Of particular interest is her time as headmistress of Massachusetts Academy, a once rivalrous counterpoint to Xavier's school. After a run-in with the time-traveling supervillain Trevor Fitzroy and his Sentinel army, Emma falls into a psychic coma. When she wakes up, she finds out the majority of her students have been massacred by Fitzroy and the Sentinels. A trauma-induced redemption arc ensues during the Phalanx Covenant storyline, which leads to the events of the Generation X comics. The TV pilot relegates this critically important backstory to a single short exchange between Banshee and Emma.
They were my students. I mean, maybe if I trained them harder, they'd still be alive.
Our headmistress retains her haughty personality and has a tenuous attachment to Tesh's unethical dream experiments, but that's all we get regarding her villainous past. Of course, it's possible that future episodes could have wrestled with these topics, but since the show never got off the ground, we can't know for sure. So after all that, you may be wondering, how was this even greenlit, let alone allowed to air in a primetime slot on Fox? Well, we have to consider the era in which Generation X was created. The X-Men animated series was on its way out, and Marvel wanted to keep the good times rolling. But while audiences were very familiar with superheroes on the big and small screen, there was no blueprint for a project of this scale. With that in mind, it makes sense it would struggle with tone. The creative team was feeling the pull of those influences while trying to appeal to an audience of edgy 90s teens and young adults. The poor reception to the extremely expensive pilot meant that Generation X would never come to be anything more than a shameful blip in Marvel's history.
I'm interested in body piercing.
Well, your priorities are shifting, darling. We're training you to be a superhero.
What's frustrating is that there are hints of greatness here. A Generation X movie or TV show is still a great idea, and other Marvel movies would go on to borrow from the pilot stylistically. The exterior shots of the X-Mansion are all shot at Hatley Castle, which would also make appearances in X-Men 2, The Last Stand, and Deadpool. Additionally, the pilot opens with a definition of mutation, letting the audience know that mutants are being persecuted. Other X-Men films would follow suit, giving us a similar opening definition via narration instead of through text.
Mutation, the key to our evolution. It has enabled us to evolve from a single-celled organism into the dominant species on the planet.
Nowadays, the pilot isn't available to watch on any legitimate streaming services, and Disney would almost certainly prefer we forget about it. But we won't forget. Even with all its irredeemable flaws, Generation X did have an impact on Marvel's foray into movies and television, and for that, we have to respect it. Well, that's all we have for you today. Thanks so much for watching this video all the way to the very end. If you liked it, be sure to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to Nerdstalgic, and let us know what you think of the Generation X pilot in the comments.